Joining us now is Democratic presidential candidate Cenk Uygur. Cenk, how you doing, dog?
I'm good.
So there's a lot I want to ask you about because there's been one kerfuffle after another in the various states that have basically prevented you from even appearing on the ballot. And so earlier this week, I covered what happened in the state of Florida. So you will not be appearing in Florida on the ballot. And more importantly, Florida has decided to just cancel their Democratic primary.
Yeah, so now several other states today actually have done something very similar, which we can get to in a minute. But in the case of Florida, Anna, they have a rule in the state that if there's only one person on the ballot, they cancel the election entirely. So and they were supposed to hand in all of the names of the people running to the Secretary of State of Florida, the Democratic Party was, at the end of November. And they contacted us a day before that and said, to all three campaigns, none of you will be on. And we said, why? We reached out, we did all the right procedure. And they said, there was a meeting on October 29th that there was no public notice that we were gonna do this presidential ballot issue at. And since you guys didn't magically know that, and we asked if you had any supporters there. We asked if there was a Biden supporter, and Biden was the only one. So he's the only one that we put on there. But the bottom line is, they're showing their hand. They're basically saying, we don't want any Biden challengers. We're doing secret meetings. We're making sure we're doing every trick in the book to make sure that not just me, but no challenger is on the ballot against Biden.
Right, because typically, it's a corporate Democrats versus the progressive candidates. But in this case, it appears that there's an orchestrated effort, and I'm speculating when I say orchestrated effort. I want to get your thoughts on that. But it seems as though there's an orchestrated effort to squash the possibility of a genuine Democratic primary at a time, by the way, when Joe Biden is polling poorly, and at a time when Joe Biden's campaign is making it abundantly clear that we must vote for him because Donald Trump is a threat to our democratic process.
Well, yeah, it's very hard to make the case in the general election that democracy is on the line when you're canceling elections in the primaries.
Right.
So at a bare minimum, it is terrible fodder to give to the Republicans. If they'll turn around and say, what do you mean? We had primaries and we let everybody run against Donald Trump. And he won fair and square, whereas Biden prevented people from running against them. And so, all right, is it really Biden? Well, he picked the leadership of the DNC, no question. And we know for a fact at our campaign that the DNC reached out to the state party in Arkansas and told them, do not put him on the ballot. So they are calling state by state, particularly against me. But now again, they're showing their hands in Florida and a couple other states where they're just trying to cancel the election entirely. But so, I mean, I want to ask Jamie Harrison, who is the head of the DNC. So are you pro-discrimination? Because that's what it looks like. You're saying that I should have less rights than you. I would fight for Jamie Harrison's right, even if we don't agree politically. But he is saying not only will he not fight for my rights as a naturalized citizen or the rights of 25 million other Americans, but that he's actively going around saying, please discriminate, please make sure that you take away his civil rights. So that's who Jamie Harrison is, and obviously Joe Biden picked him.
Okay, I gotta ask you. So Arkansas, like we were under the impression that you were making history in Arkansas, that you were going to appear on the ballot as part of the Democratic primary, but then you get word that no, the state has reneged on what they had previously told you and you will not appear on the ballot.
Yeah, so here's what happened. In that case, the DNC calls the state Democratic Party. The state Democratic Party actually was heroes and said, no, we're gonna put them on the ballot. So thank you to all the Arkansas Democrats, thank you. And so they then say to us, yes, you're on the ballot. We call the Secretary of State to make sure, because they just need the approval of the Democratic Party. Normally that's how it proceeds in Arkansas. And they say, yes, you're definitely on, you're on the website. Here's a picture of the website and you being on it as a candidate. So they bothered to do that, and we have it, and that was our documentation. And now we had approval from the Secretary of State and the Democratic Party in Arkansas. And then a day before they're set to, make it public who's on the ballot, the Secretary of State in Arkansas says, no, we changed our mind on Cenk and he's not allowed on.
That That's crazy. So we've got Florida, Arkansas. We had previously covered what happened with you in New Hampshire. They argued that you can't be on the ballot because you're not a naturalized. You're a naturalized citizen. You weren't born here. And then the fourth state is Nevada. Are there any details about what happened in Nevada that you want to share with the audience?
So real quick on that, guys. There's two, and Anna, there's two different issues here.
Yes.
One is the constitutional issue with me, and the other is just generally keep everyone you can off the ballot because Joe Biden is so weak. We're worried he's going to lose to one of you guys. And it's not just losing. If you remember, McCarthy didn't actually win. Eugene McCarthy didn't actually win New Hampshire, but he came close enough to Lyndon Johnson that Lyndon Johnson saw the handwriting on the wall. And they're trying to prevent a situation like that, where one of us gets into the 30s or 40s in one of these states, and then Biden looks ridiculously weak and is forced to drop out, right? So that's why they're trying to block us in Florida. And let me give you a quick update on that, and I'll come back to my particular issue, right? So now today, North Carolina and Tennessee have said no one's allowed on the ballot other than Joe Biden.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, but how is this okay? Okay, this is me commenting, I get it, but like, how is Biden going to make a point about how Donald Trump is a threat to democracy as he himself and the Democratic Party is working real hard to go against the will of the American people, of Democratic voters? They're not giving Democratic voters a voice. Look, they very well might nominate Biden, it might not be an issue for him. But my point is they're not even giving voters a chance.
So there's two parts to that too, Anna. That's exactly right. First of all, they're saying to Democratic voters in Florida, North Carolina, and Tennessee, we're stripping you of your voice. We don't want you to, we don't care what you think. We don't care who you want to vote for. We're gonna shove a candidate down your throat and we're gonna take away all your options. But by the way, democracy's on the line in the general election.
Crazy.
Okay. And so that's point one. There's no dispute about that. That is millions and millions of Democratic voters who now get to no say at all in who their presidential candidate is going to be. And this is particularly problematic at a time when the incumbent is so low in the polling. He's at 37% favorable, 59% unfavorable. No political analyst in their right mind would think that he could do a 22-point comeback. And so they're saying, not only are we going to take away all your choices, but we're gonna foist maybe the most unpopular Democratic candidate of all time onto you, okay? So that's point one. The point two is they're basically admitting we're worried. We're worried that Cenk or Marianne Williamson or Dean Phillips, a junior congressman, meaning like, hey, Marianne and I are outsiders, and Dean's been in politics for about 6 years or so. And they're saying, no, that's Biden can't handle it. He can't handle it. Now, if I was the president of the United States and I had the same exact situation, I'd be like, bring it, great. I want debates, I want elections. Why? It's not just because it's the right thing to do and the fair thing to do, but also because I want more press coverage of our side. I want to go and make the case, and not only for the Democratic Party, but for myself. So if I was the president and I'm in a debate, and with guys that I'm, will very likely beat, right, in that hypothetical, then I get to say to the American people over and over again why you should elect me. Hey, I'm gonna do paid family leave, I'm gonna do lower drug prices, I'm gonna increase your wages. That is hundreds of millions of dollars in free media that Biden is flushing down the toilet, and so is the Democratic Party, because they're afraid they're gonna lose to one of us. And so that's really, it's pathetic and it's undemocratic. And so it's a giant problem.
By the way, the one other thing I'll note, and I don't know if you saw this story or these headlines, but Biden is serious about running for re-election. He's been fundraising like crazy over the last few days. And during one of the fundraisers this week, he said that he wasn't really thinking about running for re-election until he realized that Trump is running in this election. He feels that he is the best person to beat Donald Trump. It's almost as if he's not aware of the polling and how much of, honestly, a risk it is for the Democratic Party to kind of latch onto Biden's second term.
Yeah, so first I'll say, look, if you're angry about your voice being taken away and voters' voice being taken away, even if it's just a protest of a dollar, go to cenkforamerica.com and help out our cause so we can keep fighting this undemocratic principles that the DNC is trying to foist upon us. When it comes to Biden, Anna, look, I think it's a legitimate conversation about how much mental decline he's had. How do you look at, you're down 24 points on the economy, you're down 19 points on jobs, you're now losing younger voters, 0% chance of winning if a Democratic candidate has lost younger voters. Now, Trump is at 40% with Arab American voters and Biden's at 35%.
Wow.
You've lost Arab American voters to a guy who said he would ban Muslims from the country. I mean, you really can't be any worse of a candidate. And now this guy who is obviously in some form of senility thinks he's the only one who could beat Trump. He's in a disastrous situation where he's at 15 points lower than when he barely beat Trump the last time. And apparently he doesn't realize it. Like, it's a real question. Has anyone in the White House sat Joe Biden down and told him, hey brother, you're 15 points lower than when you last ran against him. And now you're losing, last poll he's losing by 8. And he's got to win by 5 to win the Electoral College. Has anyone at the White House told him what day it is? And the fact that he has a terrible chance, and he's 13 points lower than a generic Democrat.
That's crazy.
But it's a serious question, and the press should ask Joe Biden, do you know you're 13 points lower than a generic Democrat? That any Democrat other than you would have a much, much higher percentage chance of beating Donald Trump. Maybe he just doesn't even know. And Anna, one last thing about that's really important. Saudi Arabia obviously has an excellent relationship with the Trump family, right? $2 billion to Jared Kushner, the golf courses being used by the PGA, et cetera, and LIV that Saudi Arabia bought. We all know the history of Saudi Arabia and the Trump family. Saudi Arabia basically controls international gas prices.
They sure do.
So if right before the election, the Saudis jack up gas prices.
And the way they would do that is by withholding production of oil, right? To lower the supply of oil, which would translate to higher gas prices.
Yeah, and so if they do that, gas prices go up right before the election. A sitting incumbent president is toast. Biden or not Biden, you can't have an incumbent president that is this weak and can be rocked by anything that happens in the news. If let's say Governor Shapiro from Pennsylvania is running, you can't pin gas prices on the governor of Pennsylvania, but they will definitely pin it on Biden. And the Saudis will almost definitely jack up the gas prices at the end. It's guaranteeing a Trump win. This is the biggest political malpractice of our lifetimes.
So what are you and the other Democratic candidates gonna do about this? There were some reports that in response to Florida canceling its Democratic primary, you guys were considering a potential lawsuit. So where are you with all of that?
So in the case of Florida, it's all three of us. We're doing, our campaign is going to do an implementation challenge next week. And an implementation challenge says to the DNC and the Florida Democrats, you have to follow your own rules. Here are the rules that you clearly violated. And so you have to put us back on the ballot. The problem is now the Florida law says that we can't go back on the ballot and Republicans run Florida. Okay, so the Democrats, that's why they waited. They said, we had the secret meeting on October 29th and we told you on November 29th. But why did you wait a month to tell us so that this exact situation would happen and go, sorry, we cheated, but it's too late now because the Republicans won't let us put you on the ballot. So, okay, if that's the case, we never had that election. I mean, that's a stone cold fact. That's not arguable. That election is not going to happen.
Wow.
And then Biden says that should be my delegates. Why? Wait, let me get this right. You should have all the delegates of an election that didn't happen? No, and as I said in a press conference earlier, okay, then I claim all the delegates. I have just as much of a right to the delegates as he does. We're both in the race, and so there was no election. And look, will I be willing to compromise at some point and say there's 4 of us in the race and all 4 of us should get a quarter of the delegates? Maybe, we'll have to negotiate that. No, I'm being dead serious. I know it sounds funny, but he has no rights to those delegates at all.
I agree. He feels entitled to them, but there was no primary election.
No, you can't say there's no election, but we think Joe Biden won.
Yeah,
that's not a thing. That's not a thing at all. So that's all 3 of us. For me, very likely we're going to sue the state of South Carolina. Okay, and because they took $20,000 of our money. Okay, by the way, you guys, like a lot of people in the audience sent that in, average folks sent that in, grandmas, grandpas, I know because I have the letters, right? Average of $30 a piece. And the Democratic Party and Jamie Harrison are saying, we're just gonna steal it.
That is, by the way, that is insane. So you have to spend a considerable amount of money to make it on the ballot in various states. And so in some cases, they'll take the money and then tell you you're not going to appear on the ballot.
Yeah. And so
that's crazy.
So now that forces us to sue them, and now we need money to get our money back, let alone get on the ballot.
Wow.
So cenkforamerica.com, we appreciate it. By the way, there's a ton of events that I want to tell you about if we can in a second. But so in this case, South Carolina has said, given only the reason of constitutional reasons, in other words, you're not a natural born citizen, but that is not their decision to make. The FEC, the Federal Election Commission, has said naturalized citizens can run. The Supreme Court has said that naturalized citizens cannot be treated as second-class citizens. They must have the same rights. It was not a presidential case, but they did cite the 14th Amendment and said it says all persons born or naturalized must have equal protection, and they cannot, and discriminating against naturalized citizens is impermissible discrimination. That is the Supreme Court. So where does the state of South Carolina get off saying, no, we know better than the Supreme Court? We're gonna make a rando decision on a constitutional law matter, and we're gonna discriminate actively against 25 million Americans who are naturalized citizens. They have no right to do that. So we're gonna take them to court and we're gonna win on the core constitutional issue, and we're gonna liberate 25 million Americans. And they're finally going to be equal citizens. So we're all sick of being treated as second class.
So finally, tell the audience about the events you have coming up and how they can help support what you're doing here, because this is something that goes beyond you know, what you're fighting for to ensure that there is equality among those who are born here and those who are naturalized citizens. That's incredibly important. So how can they support you?
Well, so this is really important, guys, because we very literally need you. In Florida, we need about 20 Democrats to sign an affidavit to say, yes, I wanted to vote. And they wouldn't let me vote, and this is outrageous, okay? So go to cenkforamerica.com, you'll see, you could give us your name and email at the bottom of the front page, or you can go to events, that's a separate tab. And so in Florida, we need Florida Democrats to join our case. It's not a civil case, it's a direct case to the DNC and the Democratic Party in Florida. In Arizona, we need to go collect signatures, and it's, if you pay a company, it's very expensive, but if we do it together, we can do it. And I'm gonna go on Friday and Saturday, and I'm doing a town hall about it, which I'll tell you about in a second. But Arizona also, under events page on cenkforamerica.com, you can come join me in Arizona. We go collect signatures together. By the way, that's called democracy. That's beautiful. That's people working together to go actually put us on the ballot. And by the way, after you work hard on that, as people have in different states for us, if they then reject us again, they're basically slapping you across the face. Okay, and then finally, I'm doing a town hall on Friday. It's gonna be at 2 o'clock Eastern. And under events, you could also see how you can RSVP to that town hall, because I wanna make the campaign much more interactive now. So yes, we really appreciate any funds that you send us, $1, $1,000, $100, whatever you can afford, cenkforamerica.com. But also the volunteers to get signatures, to help us do affidavits in Florida, all those different things. So come, and the town hall, we're gonna talk about how do we do this together? Not just my campaign, but all of us. How do we as Democratic voters start a rebellion and fight back against the DNC who's trying to cancel elections all across the country?
Love it, so please help out if you want to basically fight back against the undemocratic actions of the DNC. And definitely check out all the events that Cenk is gonna be doing. Thank you, Cenk. Hopefully we'll have you on again soon to give us updates on any progress you're making with efforts to fight back against what Democrats are doing.
I appreciate that, and I just say last word is that, guys, we're not gonna give up. Like this is not a lot of people think like, oh, are you gonna drop out because you didn't get on a couple of ballots? Hell no. No, when they do illegal, unfair practices, I double down. So we're gonna fight even harder, and we're gonna make sure that you get justice, because it isn't just about me, it's about you guys. You guys should get to vote, and they're trying to take that away from you. Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members, because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us, become a Young Turk.